President Obama gave his joint address to Congress last night, Republicans were looking to cook up a response. And no, I'm not referring to Governor Jindal's televised rebuttal. They needed something big, something akin to the Reagan Revolution, something like the Gingrich Revolution of 1994. Our third story in the countdown, the next Republican uprising will be Twitterized. More than a few heads buried in BlackBerries yesterday evening, texting their way through the president's address, but some Republicans are banking on the messaging service as the future of the party. Congressman John Culberson of Texas noting the technology is, quote, the next revolution that's going to take back Congress. Bring in former House Speaker Newt Gingrich telling his Twittering class of conservatives to use microblogging to attack the Dems. Here is what he Twittered during President Obama's address. Nobody messes with Joe, and the smiles and Nancy handshake resembled a Democratic pep rally, not a State of the Union, sophomoric and silly. For the record, it really wasn't a State of the Union, Newt. President only gives a State of the Union address after his first full year in office. But then Mr. Gingrich offered up this tweet. Speaker Pelosi standing up to applaud the private jet line while she flies around in a government jet at taxpayer expense verges on bizarre. Actually, Speaker Pelosi's jet is the same security precaution that was extended to Speaker Hastert after the 9/11 attacks, and notably, Speaker Pelosi said she was more than willing to travel commercial. But not all Republicans Twitter alike. At around the same time the president spoke of pulling the country together, Congressman Joe Barton of Texas Twittered this. Aggie basketball game is about to start on ESPN2 for those of you that aren't going to bother watching Pelosi smirk for the next hour. Minutes later, disregard that last tweet from a staffer. Revolutionary indeed. Time to call in our own political analyst, Craig Crawford, also CQPolitics.com. Good evening, Craig.
Hey, as if we needed more twits from D.C.
You do this with the Twitter thing. If Congressman Barton is letting staffers put out his tweets for him, hasn't he missed the point of the process?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been doing it long, but long enough to pick up on sort of the ethos of Twittering. And it really ought to be real, and it ought to be relatively pleasant. But unfortunately, like most Internet phenomenons, the bigger they get, the more they get away from their founding principles. So it stands to reason politicians are going to use it.
What is long in this world? 8 months and not long, but reasonably is 8 days, or what?
Yeah, I think it has a half-life. I mean, the thing about Twitter, and Keith, is it's sort of like a public square, and all kinds of people come. A Twitter pal of mine pointed out, you got your wandering minstrels and your town criers and vendors and frauds. You can follow anybody you want. So if there are people you don't want to read, you don't have to follow them.
I already have a sense that too many people are following me as it is, so I've sort of avoided this. But about Mr. Gingrich.
Well, there are a lot of Twitterers, a lot of your fans out there are clamoring for you to start Twittering.
Honestly, I signed up and I couldn't figure it out. I swear to God that's true. Well, let me ask you about Newt Gingrich, which is of more interest. The other missed point here, I would think, is this. If you say something dumb to your colleagues, like you call the president's joint address a State of the Union when it isn't, well, big deal. Everybody does that. We all thought that at some point last night. But if you suddenly put out what is, in effect, a mass email with this mistake in it, it's forever.
Yeah. You can delete it, but it still sort of sticks out there, and you can't edit them. So it is important to be a bit careful, but that's the problem, is they're so fast, and people sit on their phones and type with their thumbs. There are going to be mistakes made of content and typos, and they're hard to pull back. But, I mean, people got to remember, when you got a lot of people following you and you're saying these things, I mean, it's like singing in the shower for all the internets to watch.
I was asked about Twitter the other night, and I spoke some heresy. I said, look, frankly, I love my colleague David Gregory, but I am not interested in knowing when he has just had a bagel. Does this new means of social networking have an actual shelf life in politics, or are people who see this as a revolution of any sort overrating its long-term impact?
Well, I follow David, and I actually saw that and thought, geez, I haven't had a bagel in a while, and I thought I might get one. So, see, he's stimulating the economy. but the idea is that, it is a natural place for politics because, like-minded people follow each other, follow their leaders, share ideas. My only concern about a lot of this stuff is we've got enough of a problem with people only wanting to hear what they want to hear and not listening to the other side. And I think this is probably a conduit for just exacerbating that problem. But it is a wide open place, like I say, a public square, and you can follow or unfollow anybody you want.
Do we want our elected representatives using company time, as it were, to Twitter rather than to say, solve the economy?
think it's a good thing for voters and citizens to get some access to the personal lives of these politicians, a little more of a direct connection. I mean, it depends on how they use it. I think if it's, I think Claire McCaskill, the senator from Missouri, uses it quite well. I mean, some people think it's a little goofy, I guess, but you get a sense of what her day's like and what she's really thinking and who she really is. And I don't think in the long run that really hurts.
Well, if it is personal and it's not Joe Barton's staffer, I think maybe you're right about that. Craig Crawford.
Yeah, I think that is important, yeah.
Of CQPolitics.com, in which this was twittered while we were speaking by CQ Politics. So there you go. It's
everywhere.
Infinite
loop.
Thank you, Craig.